Hello YouTube, it's Dennis Nottingham here with Advanced Trucking. I had kind of a hot topic that I hear a lot about. It's mostly people out on the internet not knowing exactly what they're talking about, but I wanted to kind of share a little bit about it. The firm that represents us is Scopelitis. It is one of the largest transportation firms, law firms out there. They do an excellent job, and they try to keep us up to date with different things that are going on in the marketplace and in transportation. So one of the topics that I hear regularly is about dispatching, and dispatching being illegal if you don't have a broker authority. So the FMCSA just released some information regarding this particular topic, and Scopelitis was nice enough to kind of send out an alert to kind of go over freight dispatching and being a bona fide agent and being a broker. So I'm just going to kind of touch a little bit about those issues and go over a few of those items. So again, if you like our videos and like our content, hit subscribe. We appreciate it. Thumbs up, all that good stuff. We do appreciate it. So Advanced Trucking, I'm the owner of out of Indianapolis, Indiana. We are a dry van and now a flatbed carrier. We run about 50 trucks. We do lease on owner operators, and we do have trucks that are for lease. We don't currently dispatch drivers, but now that this come out, it may be something we explore in the future. There has always been some hesitation as far as, needing a brokerage authority and all that good stuff. But let's go over a little bit about what Scopelitis and FMCSA have to say about the dispatch services. As you can see here, FMCSA announces guidance on the definition of broker and bona fide agent, as well as the role of a dispatch service. So on November 16th, the FMCSA will issue guidance regarding the definition of what constitutes a broker and a bona fide agent of a broker. The guidance is not rulemaking and will be effective immediately. However, the FMCSA has nevertheless requested comment on the guidance and may issue updated guidance based on comments received. The comment period will be open for 60 days. The guidance issued pursuant to the mandate of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which directed FMCSA to consider the role of so-called dispatch services in transportation and whether such services, which often purport to represent multiple motor carriers, can be considered a bona fide agent of a motor carrier. The question of whether a dispatch service can be a bona fide agent of a motor carrier is important because bona fide agents of motor carriers are not required to hold brokerage authority when acting in the capacity of an agent for a motor carrier. All right. Under the existing regulations, a bona fide agent of a motor carrier is defined as persons who are part of the normal organization of a motor carrier and perform duties under the carrier's directions pursuant to a pre-existing agreement. Again, pre-existing agreement, which provides for a continuing relationship precluding the exercise of discretion of the part of the agent in allocating traffic between the carrier and others. Moving to the actual guidance proffered by the FMCSA, one issue that was apparently raised by numerous commenters was the comment on both sides was whether and to what extent handling of monies paid by shippers for motor carrier transportation is determinative, or whether one acts as a broker according to the FMCSA. Handling money exchanged between shippers and motor carriers is a factor that strongly suggests the need for broker authority, but is not an absolute requirement for one to be considered a broker. Electronic load boards that do more than match loads may want to assess their status. Okay. All right. As to a question whether one can represent multiple motor carriers and still operate as a bona fide agent, the FMCSA was less clear. The FMCSA did not adopt an interpretation that a bona fide agent may only represent one single carrier. So basically the FMCSA, if I'm reading the way I'm reading it, is you can represent multiple carriers as an agent, okay? Basically the FMCSA stated, any determination will be highly fact-specific and will entail determining whether the person or company is engaged in the allocation of traffic between motor carriers. We take this conclusion to mean that the FMCSA believes one could represent multiple motor carriers without having discretion as to how to allocate freight between the motor carriers, okay? For instance, it may be possible that a party is appointed as an agent of multiple motor carriers, but only one of the carriers has a contract to service a specific shipper. In that instance, the agent would presumably not have discretion in allocating freight amongst the motor carriers. So basically, if the agent, if the dispatcher's going out and contacting the brokers and getting the freight for an owner-operator or acting as a dispatch service, as long as that freight is not only allocated to one company, okay? So just going on the load board or calling C.H. Robinson or Coyote or one of these companies and pulling a load off and helping an owner-operator or a company, you can work as an agent. You can, in my interpretation, you can work for as many companies as you'd like. So we'll dig further into that. But as long as it's not, hey, I'm running target loads and I'm the contact, then that you become a broker, right? And so you're going to need a brokerage license if there's, if it's a company that you're specifically hired to haul their particular freight. So a broker is just a broker, right? They're looking for, as long as that carrier's approved with them, they're going to give it to just about anybody as long as they come to a contract or an agreement. So. All right. As we move forward here, any determination will be highly fact-specific and will entail determining whether the person or company is engaged in allocation of traffic between motor carriers. Okay, well, I'm sorry, I went over that already, so let me go skip on down here to the next part here. Regarding dispatch services, the FMCSA acknowledged that the term is poorly defined, but identified 3 features that appeared to be common amongst the various proposed descriptions. First, they work exclusively for motor carriers, not shippers. Second, they source loads for motor carriers. And third, they perform additional service for motor carriers that are unrelated to sourcing shipments. Okay, meaning probably fill out and do administrative duties and so on and so forth. Given the generality of the description, it is not surprising that the FMCSA then proposed a fact-specific approach to answering the question of whether dispatch service is required to hold a broker authority or whether it is a bona fide agent, but did not offer some guidance. All right, let me scroll down here so you can read along. When a dispatch service does not participate in the arrangement of freight, or when it represents only one motor carrier, it is not a broker. If a dispatch service arranges transportation on behalf of multiple motor carriers, engages in allocation of traffic, however, then pursuant to blah, 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 49 CFR 371.2, it is not a bona fide agent and must obtain a broker operating registration. Regarding whether a dispatch service is a bona fide agent, one must analyze whether the services fall within the definition of a bona fide agent. However, if the dispatch service allocates traffic between 2 motor carriers, it cannot be a bona fide agent by definition. Meaning, you can't take a load from a broker and then rebroker it for less, right? So that's brokering. You can't take a load and then give it to another load, right? I mean, if you're acting as a dispatcher and you're just going on and you're finding loads for a driver or a company, and you're just charging a fee for that service, that's fine. But you can't take money from the actual rate. You can't say, okay, I just locked this down for $1,500. I sold it to this other carrier for $1,300. You can't do that. You can get paid. Whatever your agreement, whatever your contract is with that carrier, you can get paid to dispatch. So a lot of dispatch services charge, hey, we even used dispatch services early on when we started. I think it was 5% or 6% or whatever the line haul was that they charged us. And they charged us directly. They didn't charge the shipper. They didn't charge the broker. They charged us a fee, and they acted as a contractor, an independent contractor for my company. And so it is perfectly fine for them to work for me, whether it's 2 hours a week or 3 hours a week. If I want to contract with them, then it's fine. All right. So as we scroll down here, the guidance begs multiple questions, including what does FMCSA mean by participate in the arrangement of freight? For instance, would the FMCSA consider identifying a load, negotiating the rate, and communicating regarding pickup and delivery times as participating in the arrangement of freight? It also begs the question of what is meant by engages in allocation of traffic. Say, for instance, a dispatch service identifies a load that would be a good fit for multiple motor carriers that it represents, and either carrier would be required to enter into a new contract with the shipper to move the freight. Is that dispatch service allocating freight by communicating its existence to each carrier? The FMCSA did provide additional guidance. Specifically, the following would be factors indicating that a dispatch service does not require brokerage authority. Generally, the factors relevant to whether a dispatch service is not required to obtain brokerage authority are stated below. All right, here we go. The dispatch service has a written legal contractual relationship with a motor carrier that clearly reflects the motor carrier is appointing the dispatch service as a licensed agent for the motor carrier. This is often a long-term contractual relationship. Number 2, the written legal contract specifies the insurance and liability responsibilities of the dispatch service and carrier. The dispatch service must also meet all the state licensing requirements. Okay? So you got to be using your own insurance. They got to have their own insurance and all that good stuff, right? Because they're an independent, basically, company, independent contractor. The dispatch service goes through a broker to arrange for the transportation of shipments for the motor carrier. The dispatch service may not seek or solicit shippers for freight. Okay, so they can go to brokers, but they can't go directly to shippers. Okay, so the dispatch service would be limited to just going to brokers and arranging freight. If they're going directly to a shipper, and then they're trying to negotiate, then yes, you would need some sort of brokerage authority, where you would have to have your brokerage authority for that. The service does not provide billing nor accept compensation from the broker. Again, they can't accept compensation from the broker. It's got to come from the carrier. But instead receives compensation from the motor carriers based on the predetermined written legal contractual agreement. Okay, again, that's at 5, 6, 7. I've heard 10%. I've heard different numbers out there for dispatch services. The dispatch service is not an intermediary or involved in the financial transaction between a broker and a motor carrier. So they're just basically calling, getting loads, negotiating, and getting, acting as an agent for the carrier. All right. The dispatch service is an IRS 1099 recipient from the motor carrier or a W-2 employee of the motor carrier as specified in the legal written contract. All right, so again, you got to have that contract and have it outlined to what exactly they are. The dispatch service does not subsequently assign or arrange for the load to be moved by another motor carrier. So they got to do. You can only work for the motor carrier you're working for, right? So you can't pull down a load for Advanced Trucking and then have Joe the shit rag trucking and they haul it, right? Then that's a no-no. You've got to, whoever you're working for who needs to haul the load. A dispatch service does not provide their services for a motor carrier unless that motor carrier specifically appointed that dispatch service as their agent in accordance with the aforementioned requirements. Again, that's just going back to your contract. All right, here are the following factors. Okay, for dispatch services when they should have their brokerage authority. All right. The dispatch service interacts and negotiates a shipment of freight directly with the shipper or representative of the shipper. Okay, again, that's direct freight, contract freight, needs to go, you need to be a broker, can't be a dispatcher. The dispatch service accepts or takes compensation for a load from the broker, a factoring company, or is involved in any part of the monetary transaction between any of the entities. So you can't get paid by the broker, you can't get paid by the shipper, you got to get paid by the motor carrier because you're working for the motor carrier. All right. The dispatch service arranges for a shipment of freight for a motor carrier in which there is no written legal contract with the motor carrier that meets the aforementioned criteria. You need to have that written contract in place before you do any work for the motor carrier. The dispatch service accepts a shipment without a truck or carrier, then attempts to find a truck carrier to move the shipment. Okay, so you're a dispatcher and you're like, oh, I just found this load out there on Truck Smarter or whatever it is, and then you go out and try to find a carrier to move it for you. Then you need to have a brokerage license. You can't. You need to be actually working and have, again, basically what it boils down to, you just need to make sure you got a good contract in place with the carrier. And if you have that in place, then you should be good. All right. The dispatch service is a named party on the shipping contract. So yeah, again, you can't, the carrier's name has to be on the contract. It can't be, ABC Dispatch on the contract, or it could be another carrier and then they're giving it to you or the other carrier. You can't do that. And the dispatch service is if they were soliciting to the open market of carriers for the purposes of transporting a freight shipment. So they were out advertising a specific freight shipment and trying to find any carrier to haul it. They can't do that. They'd have to have a brokerage authority. And let's see. So we go on and it says, it is clear based on feedback from the industry that there is a need and a desire for dispatch services among large and small motor carriers. A beneficial role that a dispatch service may provide is the outsourcing of resources for small motor carriers who cannot afford a full-time employee to perform these functions. The dispatch service can help to ensure the motor carrier has a steady stream of shipments while allowing the motor carrier to focus on its core business of safely transporting freight. The FMCSA does not believe it is an intent of Congress to eliminate the service that dispatch services provide. While no single factor is paramount in assessing the business relationship between a dispatch service and a motor carrier, the extent of motor carriers' control over the individuals performing the dispatch services is highly significant, i.e. the dispatch service works on behalf of the motor carrier and makes decisions based on the motor carrier's guidance and direction. As noted, the FMCSA determines whether a dispatcher is conducting broker operations on a case-by-case basis, utilizing factors including those above. All right, well, there you have it, folks. I know that's been a question that's been out there for several years. I started this business in 2016, and it has been, a rumor mill, hot topic online. It seems like forever since I started. So, there's a lot of dispatch services out there. I would recommend, I'm coming from a trucking company, I would recommend really screening those folks that are going to dispatch. They pop up all the time. You got to find out how it is they're finding you better loads, and make sure that it's your name on those rate cons, or your company's name on those rate cons. You want to make sure that it's not another trucking company and then they're giving it to you, because I guarantee they're taking some off the top. So there are some good dispatching services out there. I've used a couple in the past, so if you need a recommendation, reach out to me. Send me a message here on YouTube, and I will get you in contact with a couple. But again, my name is Dennis Nottingham. I'm the owner of Advanced Trucking out of Indianapolis, Indiana. Our website is Advanced Trucking. It's advanced with an ED, trucking.net. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you.